When you think of the Roman Empire, you probably picture marble statues, dramatic political betrayals, maybe some emperors clad in purple. But today, I want us to look right past that marble and see the actual machinery underneath. We're going to reframe Rome today, not just as an ancient civilization, but as a highly optimized, carefully calculated, and completely interconnected machine. Because Rome didn't conquer and hold the known world just by swinging swords around, they did it by engineering a literal imperial operating system.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the Imperial blueprint, then look at the mobile power core, see how they were maintaining the human machine, explore the engine of spectacle, and finally, tie it all together into a closed loop of power.
So let's dive right into part one, the Imperial blueprint. To really understand this Roman operating system, we have to look at its two synchronized engines. Out on the frontier, you had the Castra Legionis, the military camps. This was all about projecting power, right? Physical enforcement. But back on the home front, you had things like the Colosseum, and its main purpose was managing attention and psychological pacification. Now, these two structures look completely different. One is a strict, grid-like fortress, and the other is an arena of bloody spectacle, but they were actually two sides of the exact same coin. They both serve the ultimate purpose of imperial control. Let's head out to the frontier for part two, the mobile power core. The massive problem Rome faced was expansion. How on earth do you project Roman order over vast, newly conquered, and usually rebellious lands? Well, their answer was the castra. To put this in perspective, a standard, permanent legionary fortress covered 55 acres. That is roughly the size of 23 modern soccer fields. And it formed a massive rectangle, about 470 by 470 meters, completely enclosed by a ditch and a rampart. But the true genius of the Roman camp wasn't just its size. It was the absolute standardization. These weren't just simple mud forts, They were prefabricated cities of order. A standard layout meant 4 gates connected by 2 main roads, intersecting right at the center where the command headquarters, the Praetorium, was always located. It was ruthlessly efficient. Every single unit knew exactly where its barracks were. A legion could construct one of these fully functional fortresses for thousands of soldiers in a matter of hours. They were essentially modular blueprints for power, and many actually laid the groundwork for major European cities today, like Cologne and Vienna. But of course, to get to those frontiers, this machine had to actually move. And the standard marching order, it was a highly disciplined ritual. First, you've got your scouts, then the vanguard, the officers, the main body of legionaries, the massive baggage train, which they called the impedimenta, and finally, the rear guard. A marching column of 7,200 men and 1,900 animals would literally stretch 1.9 kilometers long. It acted as a highly vulnerable but incredibly disciplined mobile power core, slicing its way through hostile territory. And man, when that mobile core finally unpacked, the scale was just awe-inspiring. Think about this, a fully deployed legion with roughly 9,000 men and animals standing at parade rest with all their gear took up 25 million square meters, or 25 square kilometers of space. Just try to imagine standing on a hill and watching that mechanical tide of armor and logistics roll into your lands. It's wild. Okay, moving right along to part 3, maintaining the human machine. Now, if the Colosseum was designed to control the masses at home, the Romans needed another machine to maintain the tools of that control abroad. Enter the Validudarium, the military hospital. And listen, we shouldn't think of this in the modern humanitarian sense, okay? This wasn't a place of compassion, it was a maintenance bay for military capacity. In an era where civilian medicine was basically a chaotic mix of folk remedies and prayers, the Roman army institutionalized care. These hospitals, found right inside those legionary fortresses, had a standardized, highly sophisticated layout. They had isolated sick rooms for good ventilation, and a professional staff armed with scalpels, forceps, and bone saws. They were fully capable of handling arrow extractions and complex amputations. In this whole system, it was a calculated investment. The legions were the state's most valuable asset, and losing a trained soldier to a preventable infection was a total failure of logistics. So, alongside the medical staff, you had scribes tracking payrolls and the engineering corps supervising laborers, managing 1,600 transport mules. The ultimate goal wasn't simply to heal the sick, it was a human maintenance engine. They were converting injured bodies back into usable components of the Imperial army, making sure the state's primary tool of enforcement stayed sharp. Let's transition from the dusty frontiers back to the capital for part 4, the engine of spectacle. There's a great quote that captures this perfectly.
The Colosseum wasn't built simply to entertain the people, it was built to keep them under control. Emperor Vespasian actually built the Colosseum directly over the artificial lake of the former tyrant Emperor Nero's private golden palace. It was a brilliant, highly calculated political move. He literally drained a hated tyrant's private luxury to build a massive public playground. I mean, talk about propaganda cast in stone, right? And it was an absolute masterpiece of crowd management. The Colosseum could hold over 50,000 spectators. It utilized 80 numbered entrances, very much like a modern sports stadium. Spectators actually had tickets that guided them through a massive system of radial stairways, meaning 50,000 people could efficiently flood into those seats or evacuate in a matter of minutes. But walking into the Colosseum was fundamentally a socially reinforcing act. Walk through this seating hierarchy with me for a second. At the very bottom tier, right up close to the blood and the action, you had the senators and the elites. Just above them, the equestrian class, then the ordinary Roman citizens, and way up at the top on the wooden bleachers sat the poorest citizens and slaves. This strictly segregated seating physically put every single Roman in their place. Yes, you were watching a show, but you were also watching society ordered perfectly around you.
This all fed directly into the infamous strategy of bread and circuses. Basically, it was a political strategy of providing free food and spectacular entertainment to pacify the masses. And by spectacular, I mean gladiator fights, exotic animal hunts, and even flooding the entire arena floor for massive mock naval battles. The emperors were deliberately distracting the population. It kept the masses pacified, united, and entirely dependent on the emperor's generosity. But the cost of this distraction was honestly staggering. Over its roughly 400 years of active use, an estimated 400,000 men and 1 million beasts were killed in that arena. It was slaughter, but on a meticulously organized industrial scale. The really crazy part? The magic of this spectacle was all generated below the sand, in a 2-story underground masonry structure called the Hypogeum. This was the ultimate backstage machine. It was outfitted with 60 massive wooden winches, operated by hundreds of workers. This underground labyrinth allowed wild animals, gladiators, and even entire stage sets to be hoisted up through secret trapdoors in the arena floor. To the crowd above, it looked like literal magic, but below, it was pure, grueling engineering. They even engineered for comfort. Because sitting in the blazing Mediterranean sun all day would be unbearable, the Romans designed the velarium. This was a massive, retractable fabric awning, supported by 240 masts around the very top edge of the stadium. It actually required specialized sailors from the Imperial fleet to operate a vast network of ropes and pulleys. They effectively air-conditioned the arena with shade. Unbelievable, right? Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, a closed loop of power. When we finally zoom out, we realize these aren't isolated phenomena at all. The Colosseum wasn't a one-off. There were over 230 amphitheaters stretching all the way from England to Africa. While the Colosseum unified the incredibly diverse population in Rome, these regional structures were scalable tools of Romanization. They were specifically designed to spread Roman values, courage, martial prowess, swift execution, to conquered enemies abroad.
So, here is the operating system loop in its entirety. The castra are the mobile power cores projecting military force and administrative order into new territories. They are the sharp end of the spear. The valetudinaria are the maintenance bays, ensuring that the human components of the military machine are repaired and returned to service. And the Colosseum, that's the engine of spectacle, managing the attention and emotions of the massive population at home. The camps project power, the hospitals maintain that power, and the amphitheaters distract from the brutal realities of that power. It's a completely closed loop, revealing that Rome's true genius was its ability to assemble, classify, and manage human beings on a massive scale.
Which leaves us with this final thought. When we look at this incredible organizational genius, the calculated deployment of logistics, medicine, and psychological control, was Rome's greatest weapon truly its sword? Or was it this relentless, perfectly engineered system? Think about that the next time you see a picture of the Colosseum. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.